Good morning, I'm Nadine Dereza and joining you on the last day of Sibos 2015. And it's the last day of Sibos TV.
I know, that's happened quite quickly. It feels like
has.
it's just gone by. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Stephen Chia. It is our last Good Morning Sibos of 2015. We've got with us this morning Chris Hall, editor of Sibos Issues, and Anna Herrera, technology and trading reporter at Financial News. Good morning, guys. Welcome to the show once again for the very last time. So, Anna, we'll start with you. So, this time around at Sibos 2015, what's jumped out at you?
I think I was surprised by how much kind of fintech, disruption, innovation were mentioned everywhere. Usually it used to be something kind of reserved for in a tribe, and now I think very much the issues that were like focal in a tribe have kind of been brought into other sessions. For example, I went to one of the sessions with the ECB board member, and I expected to get a story, like a back office story, but he talked about blockchain too, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, there's been a lot about blockchain, a lot about inner tribe, interweaved in all the different various sessions. And Chris, for you, when you look back over the last 3 days, nearly 4, what has struck you as being the key themes and what's really got you going?
Well, I think in addition to the kind of technology, I guess technology is a driver, but also kind of response to regulatory change has been quite important as well. Actually, in some ways, the two do kind of mesh. Certainly, I mean, I've been attending one or two of the standards forum sessions, and there's been a lot of looking at how the application of technology can help resolve a lot of the regulatory issues, because really it's about kind of transparency and reporting, to the regulatory authorities, and use of standards and use of technology is a good way of banks being able to do that, to provide that level of transparency at a relatively low cost.
And do you think it's moved on since this time last year in Boston, marrying technology and standards together? Do you think that's a real game changer?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's been a number of different kind of case studies that have been presented that have shown the kind of the move from kind of theory to implementation of standards. I attended a session yesterday with the European Central Bank, and it was a kind of joint venture between their kind of operations and statistics people in order to kind of rebuild the kind of monitoring of money market statistics in Europe after the market had been virtually kind of restructured in the aftermath of the collapse of Lehman's.
Well, Chris, also tell us in this issue of Sibos, what can people look out for? What should they be? Which article should they be reading as a must?
Well, we've got several articles about the fact that it is the kind of a real ASEAN focus today. We have, in the closing plenary, there's the Managing Director of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Ravi Menon. There's the, and in addition to the kind of several sessions with kind of leading bankers from the region, there's also the big issue debate, which is all about the internationalization of the renminbi. So there's quite a focus on ASEAN, but also China as well.
I mean, that's the key headline, isn't it? Stay calm, internationalize the RMB.
Yeah.
And this magazine is all about previewing the day ahead. I understand there will be a wrap-up version in about 3 weeks' time.
Yes,
You'll
that's
look at
right.
the whole 4 days collectively.
Yeah.
What else is in this paper that you think is going to catch people's eyes?
Well, I think we're talking about a lot of the kind of sessions that are happening on the last day. We've got a focus on quite how Singapore has succeeded as an international financial hub in the article that you have there, and how it's kind of over the 50 years how it's evolved. But actually, we also have an item in the on the back page. Inside back page, which is where we talked to quite a few local banks about how they see the future of Singapore as a. And
you talk about Singapore banking at crossroads. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, that's partly a play on the fact that the major Singaporean banks are actually facing in the exhibition hall. They are actually kind of facing each other across the crossroads.
A bit literal there, aren't we?
But it's also a matter of. Well, I guess that Singapore, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, but has kind of built itself as a kind of international hub, as a kind of gateway to Asia, and as technology moves on, is that gateway role really kind of going to be as important and necessary in the next 50 years?
Yeah.
And if not, well, how does Singapore's finance centre respond to that challenge?
That's right, and I think you are right. I mean, but it's not just here. All over the world, they're wondering whether you need to have these these gateways, so to speak, because technology is bringing us that much closer. But there is a focus on ASEAN today, as you mentioned, and also on Asia. And we do talk a bit, in fact, later on in the program, I'll interview some folks from the banks here in the region to talk about how they are also coping with the challenges and the changes. Of course, sometimes forgetting that Asia and the rest of the world, they're all very different places and people operate very differently. Sometimes we forget. Mm-hmm. But Anna, let's also talk a bit about what else has been buzzing in the news, because you were telling us there's an IPO that's just taken place.
Well, it's going to take place. So Square, which is a payments company, one of the hot startups in Silicon Valley, has officially filed for an IPO. And it's interesting because the founder is Jack Dorsey, who was one of the founders of Twitter and who recently was reinstated as a CEO. So he's going to be the CEO of two very visible companies public companies at the same time.
And it's very pertinent, isn't it? Because it's in the payments space.
Exactly, yeah.
So explain what Square is.
So basically, they have a little box, which is probably not a technical word, that you it is a box.
Makes sense to me.
Is it a square box?
It's a square box. Yeah, it's a little square that you can attach to an iPhone or an iPad, and then you can accept card payments. And essentially, you've maybe seen it around. You have it normally in where you have, I don't know, stands or where there's pop-up shops, and that makes it quite easy and flexible for merchants.
Right. So it's mobile payment directly from your phone. Is that the...
No, you pay with a card, but they basically attach this little device with a USB thing to an iPad, so that way they don't need to have like another bigger sort of device to accept cards.
Are you still swiping or what?
You're swiping, I think.
Yeah, I think.
So in Europe we have another company called iZettle, which is similar. So maybe I am confusing the type of. They're similar. They both have boxes.
Okay. But the whole idea is to make it a lot more accessible. I mean, now you can tap and go where you pay with the credit cards, like pay.
Yeah, exactly, and it's just easier for for example, if you're kind of someone who's a very small business and you're traveling, even a plumber, for example, you can go around and now you can accept card payments.
Is it the right financial environment to launch an IPO? Do you think it's going to be a success?
I hope for them that it is. I think there's been a lot of anticipation in terms of there's so many companies raising money, but tech companies have preferred to stay private longer because it was such a good environment to raise private money. So this will be a test to see how it goes. The most interesting thing, as I said, will be to see how he can manage to be the CEO of two companies, because Twitter hasn't been doing so well. So now he has two to follow. So that will be interesting.
Right. Two challenges, and I guess we'll have to follow his tweets to find out more about it.
Yes.
But Chris, what can we look forward to next year? I mean, some of the issues that you think at next year's conference that will be raised.
Well, that's a big question, Stephen. I mean, I guess it rather depends on how how the next 12 months go in terms of the point you mentioned in terms of the macroeconomic environment is important. I know there's a lot of people potentially predicting that wondering is there a kind of secondary crash around the corner. A lot of the economic indicators are a bit mixed at the moment. There's a certain amount of uncertainty. I mean, you remember that people got very nervous around some of the fluctuations in the kind of Chinese stock exchange not too long ago, and that did have and at the same time, the renminbi was, rather the Central Bank of China was taking some of its steps towards freeing up the renminbi even further, and so it had to kind of take a step back on that process because of the volatility in the stock market. So it's quite an uncertain kind of environment, I think.
And one would hope that geopolitical tensions will have calmed down by then.
Well, yes, I guess we'd all hope that, but it's somewhat unpredictable, I guess. But obviously, next year it's in Geneva, so there'll be a little bit more of a European focus. There's been a lot of change in the European regulatory infrastructure. Will be that much closer to the implementation of the kind of reforms under MiFID II, which are having a big impact on how financial instruments are traded in Europe. So that could be a big focus next year.
Well, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you very much to Anna and Chris, and hopefully we'll see you again at Sibos 2016 in Geneva.
Well, we decided that for one of the last in our series, Discover Singapore, the coolest, grooviest way to show off the city was, well, I took Nadine now to a little street in Arab Street. It's called Hadji Lane. It's quite unique because it's not really like your old-style heritage Singapore, right?
No, it's cool, it's hip.
Yeah.
What are we doing
What
there?
we're doing. Let's take a look and you see what we mean.
So this is the infamous Hadji Lane. So why
Yes.
actually is it so infamous?
Well, what's unique about it, actually, it's, you know, we're in the same area, in the Arab Street area. In fact, Arab Street is just a 1-minute walk on the other side. But this stretch of road has transformed itself in the last few years to become a real, how would I put it, I guess a hipster kind of,
Independent.
you know, a lot of indie labels, local designers, you know, making their clothes, other unique items, designing bicycles, you know, there's gourmet food, so a little bit of everything, but
Yes.
all done in a very trendy kind of way. In fact, if we look right here, this mural, this wall,
Oh, I love the bull's head.
you know, you would not see this anywhere else in Singapore. In many parts of Singapore, we have generally very clean walls,
No
you know,
graffiti.
no graffiti, nothing.
Cause all these love songs will break your heart. Cause all these love songs will break your heart.
That's the way to do it, actually. Advertise your phone number.
Cause all these love songs will break your heart.
Are you a professional musician? No. Are you in school still?
I'm in this right now.
You're
So
doing that?
where do you want to go to? What's the college
I'm
fund?
planning to go to States.
Go to the
Oh, you want
States.
to go to music school? Is that the plan?
That's not the plan as of now. It's
That's
just
not the
to-
plan.
yeah.
Music is just for fun.
It's just like a side project.
I see. And a good way to pick up girls.
Yeah.
It's a bit early.
Well, good luck. I think you're
Okay.
a brilliant entrepreneur down here.
Keep
So-
playing. We like the background music as we're walking along. Feels a bit like you're in a music video. You know. Thanks, guys.
See you again.
Oh yeah.
This is cool, isn't it? Now you don't see many of these around
No,
anymore,
not
do
too
you?
much. But I'm pretty sure it works.
I
Lots
wonder
of
if our
little.
children know what these are.
Yeah, taking you back in time. A lot of vintage pieces.
This is beautiful. I think this is probably new vintage, isn't
This
it?
is new old. You know, I
Yeah.
think it's.
Dream more, fame less, eh? That's a good sentiment in life.
So these cups are kind of neat. I mean, well, not so much for what's printed on it, but the style of these cups are. In olden days, you'd put your drink in there, and because you leave it on the counter, you don't want the dust to get in or to keep it a little bit warm. So you have a little cover. I mean, this is very, very local.
Yeah.
Yeah, not. I mean, nowadays you have thermos, flasks, and all that, but in the good old days, you know, something like that would suffice.
Yeah, very practical as well,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, nice. Yeah. Plethora of stores again, lots of clothes stores, both for men and women, and jewellery shops as well.
Like this, I believe, is I'm seeing it for the first time. When I create Plazaka, handmade home decor stationery.
I'm not quite sure, is that your taste or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's no mainstream
No big
stores, are
labels,
there?
you know, no big chain
Do you think
stores.
it's quite reasonable for shops to rent down here as well?
I think
they can-
price-wise, yes.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, also because as it's developing, I mean, it's all quite recent. So I think they're not quite sure how the market will turn yet and how popular a lot of these shops would rely on tourists and on regular clients. I mean, it's really quaint. So it's not a long stretch. So you generally do it all at once. You know, it'll take you just an hour. And of course, you got to end up with some food. And on either end of the street, you've got food. Perhaps a bit of a foot massage.
my reflexology.
Yeah.
And here we've come to the end. And where does this come out to then, Hadji Lane? We're leaving the
We're leaving
Arab
Hadji
Quarter.
Lane. As you can feel the traffic coming back in, bringing you back to reality. And voila, a main road.
Yeah. Back to civilization in many ways. Well, I certainly could have spent a few Singaporean dollars on some really cool items for my children. Maybe I should go back later on before I get my flight back. And I'd like to say that joining us on the Sibos sofa is Kevin Johnson, who is the InnoTribe Startup Challenge Manager at Swift, who unsurprisingly is responsible for the InnoTribe Startup Challenge. And alongside Kevin is the winner of the Startup Challenge. Yes, it's Dan O'Prey, founder of Hyperledger. I think he's been out all night celebrating.
Yeah, that's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So tell us, and it's that old cliche, how do you feel?
Oh, absolutely delighted. It was very unexpected. The quality of startups in the final was so high that really wasn't expecting it. So over the moon.
Okay.
And, and Kevin, from your point of view, just tell us about the whole process that's been involved, because it started off with 12 rounds, variety of different cities all around the world, and to get this winner, I mean, it's a pretty special moment.
It is. This year's been our biggest ever startup challenge. We had over 370 people apply to join, and yesterday we had 12 finalists on stage, and Dan Hyperledger were fortunate enough to win. And as Dan said, the quality yesterday was astonishing. I think the best team won. But yeah, it wasn't a panel of 2 or 3 people decided, it was the whole audience there. So it was a really good job.
Well, tell us a bit more about how it actually works. So you start with 370, and this is from everywhere and anywhere in the world.
Yep, anywhere. So we basically open up a general fintech, so financial technology competition. We filter that down using a network of about 500 or 600 judges to find 60 of these. We bring those to 4 showcase events around the world. So this year we went to London. For the very first time we went down to Africa. We had a showcase in Cape Town. And we came over here to Singapore and ended up in New York where we found Dan. From that, we bring our winners here to Sibos to let them share what they're doing with the rest of the financial community.
So Dan, tell us about this award-winning idea that you've got, and can we copy it?
So there's been a lot of talk about blockchain at this conference, and it's obviously a very big topic in the financial services world at the moment. So Hyperledger's developed to be a blockchain platform specifically for regulated financial institutions. So there's no cryptocurrency built in. It's not using Bitcoin in any way. It's known as a sort of permissioned ledger, which means that you know who's operating the nodes inside the network, so you know who your vendors are. And it's a really efficient way for institutions to have a sort of shared, replicated, unified record of the truth that they can all interact with securely, and cut down on reconciliation costs and prevent trade breaks and speed up settlement times.
And you've obviously been given a cash investment prize. How do you plan on using that money? Is it $50,000?
$50,000,
is it? Yeah.
Yes, so I haven't thought about it too much yet, but I'm sure it will go to good use and on developers most likely.
There's a good shopping centre, isn't it, in the lower ground
well,
floor?
they spent 10 grand on the party last night, and then there's only 40 left, so it's... But I was going to ask you how you make all that good stuff happen, but I'm sure that's actually the secret that you can't tell us, and that's the reason why you guys won. So, so what do you think the timeline will be? Do you plan to... What are you looking at, and I guess in terms of before you get things going and where we can be, maybe next year, will you come back and have something to show?
Yes, hopefully. So actually shortly after the semi-final, we were acquired by Digital Asset Holdings, so we're a bit of a bigger team now. So we're moving a lot more quickly, and we're in sort of advanced discussions with numerous institutions about going into production next year. So I'd love to be back here and presenting what work we've done since.
And Kevin, what was it about Hyperledger that really stood out for you, and really the rest of the audience? I know it wasn't only your decision, but if you can encapsulate how the audience felt.
I think if you look at what Dan is doing, and like Dan said, everybody's talking about blockchain. I think one of the things, speaking to these guys through the coaching and things like this, they have use cases. So they're not just talking about this, and I think this is why you're actually acquired, is because you've got boots on the ground, you're really working with the industry to actually sort of understand how you can actually deliver solutions for them. So I think it struck a chord, but I have to say there were 12 teams up there, and any one of them could have won. It was incredibly close. There were some great pitches out there, some great ideas. So although you've won the 50,000, I think everybody who was on there during the reception afterwards everybody was, I used the phrase, grab a startup, grab a drink, have a chat. And there was lots and lots of networking going, lots of business cards. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few more of our finalists maybe back next year as well.
That's fantastic.
Maybe tell us very quickly a bit about some of those other finalists. You know, I mean, what again was it that stood out and made them so special?
They covered every single aspect of financial services. Everything from blockchain, remittances, reference data. We've had a real broad spectrum this year, and I think it's just showed that there are opportunities for collaboration with fintech startups, and we're trying to bring these into an area. Through the coaching, we talk to them about how to communicate with banks. We have a lot of banks on our coaching, so they actually sort of understand what the business models are as well. So it's really about understanding the startups from one side, but also for the startups to understand how the industry works. It's really a nice way to bring both sides together, those two ecosystems in one place, and actually create them a platform to actually connect and engage.
So it sounds like a brilliant process for everybody involved, and you just mentioned coaching or mentoring. So not only do you get a financial prize, but is there anything else wrapped into that whole final prize package?
So for the program this year, we've actually sort of worked with Dan a couple of times. So in the New York showcase, we had 25 coaches from tech companies and banks in the room. We've done that again here.
That's priceless, isn't it?
It's been fantastic.
How did that help you?
Just really refining the pitch and you know, really nailing it down for the audience that we'll be presenting to. So you know, that was immensely helpful in actually refining it. The presentation looked completely different by the end of the process. Yeah.
But what do you think, Dan? What's going to be the biggest challenge for you right now?
Well, right now as a company, finding the best talent to hire, because it is quite a new industry, it's quite competitive and there's very few people in that space. We've got quite good relationships with banks, and as Kevin said, you know, we are trying to collaborate and work with, you know, existing incumbent institutions. So yeah, I think the challenge for us will be scaling and getting the people that are needed to make
I'd imagine you'd have people knocking on your door now, though, now you've won a prize. But is there a skill shortage? Is that where the talent issue is?
Yeah, in the sort of distributed ledger space, is Bitcoin's 6 years old, and then, you know, people who can actually commercialize that software and who've got experience building software for banks and enterprises and knowledge of that technology is in short supply. So if there is anyone out there watching, then please do get in touch.
I'm sure they will. Well, congratulations, guys.
Right.
Isn't it a fantastic effort, Stephen, isn't it? I
It
think,
is,
really, really well done. So, and I know Inner Tribe has been hugely successful. I think it is its 7th year, so long may it continue. And I think that's a brilliant prize. So wishing you all the very best with your startup. Well, yesterday I had the pleasure of speaking to Alan Hughes from ANZ Bank about the Corporate Treasury Forum, and I asked him the following. I'm with Alan Hughes, who's Head of Transactions for ANZ, which stands for the Australian New Zealand Banking Group, and I think they're one of Australia and New Zealand's biggest groups and actually a real significant player in the region.
That's right.
Yep. So pretty significant. Yep. So first of all, talk to me about trade finance.
Trade finance. So we classify trade finance as assisting companies with their cross-border movement of goods, to provide financing, to provide risk management, and to provide more efficient ways in which they can deal with the exchange of goods.
So what do you see is meant by moving trade digitally?
Yeah, so it's been an historically paper-based business. Yeah. A lot of trade is around exchanging documents through the banking system to provide buyers and sellers with assurance that the goods have been put on a ship, and when they've been received, they're in line with what the buyer was expecting. And so the document flow and the cash flow move around and money changes hands, which is great, but it takes time.
And onerous.
And onerous, and it has risks. Paper can get lost, mistakes can be made, etc. So, but it's worked really well for the industry for hundreds of years. But now there's an opportunity to take some cost out, to shorten the process, reduce risks, etc. So people are looking to move from paper to a more digitally based transfer of those documents and the information to speed things up.
I'm surprised it hasn't been done already, actually.
Well, it's a good question, actually, because that topic is coming up quite a lot during the conference here about why trade has been sort of slow to adopt it. And I think one reason is because it's worked quite well. The old adage, it ain't broke, so don't fix it, applies. And to some extent, it's a question of prioritisation amongst, say, a corporate or a bank. And there's a lot of parties involved. You've not just got buyer and seller, you've got the shipping party, an insurance company. So you've got to get all these people together and agree you're going to change things. So Yeah, so it's been slow, but there's a few things now that have been happening in the industry. And I think, too, the world's got a bit tougher. Economies are a bit slower. Everyone's trying to find more efficient ways of operating. And so they're helping to drive some change and some things that are happening in the industry.
Do you think it's going to be easy to achieve, though?
No, I think it'll take time. I think it will be one of those scenarios where a number of companies, banks, etc., will start to do some transactions. There'll be some good publicity around that, and then people will realise there's some benefits. And I think it's almost like an industry will help each other. You'll see some of the larger sellers, for example, might deal with their clients and convince them of the opportunity that's available through digital. They'll talk to their other customers, and you'll gradually build this community that will show how things will work. Yeah.
And what do you sense are the key innovations? People talk about Bitcoin. Is that something that interests you?
Well, so Bitcoin has been talked about a lot this week. The technology behind Bitcoin, this sort of blockchain and sort of the exchange of information does have quite a relevance for trade.
Faster payments?
Faster payments again. So if you're a seller, you want to get paid quicker. If you're a buyer, you actually would rather pay once you've got the goods a little slower. So it again will have some relevance. It's more some of the tools that can allow the information that previously sat on a paper document and that I give to you to be exchanged digitally, and once that's matched, that money can flow. And you have the opportunity there, instead of relying on the postal service or a courier, to get stuff done literally real time. And once you're comfortable that everything matches, then money can go. And so there's been some things developed by Swift and by other third parties that have started to produce those tools for people.
And anything particular that you want to highlight in terms of innovation?
So the bank payment obligation, the BPO, is probably the most prominent one, and Swift has been behind that. And it's a digital version of a traditional letter of credit, which is an instrument that many people will be familiar with. And again, provides exactly the same assurances of payment and exactly the same process. But instead of the paper being delivered, it's information, and Swift provides a utility that allows that to be exchanged.
And finally, what are corporates expecting from banks in this area?
So I think they're looking for ideas and innovation. I would say to all banks and to corporates, we need to understand the corporates' problems, needs and drivers. And I think, again, understanding where their pressure points are in this process. Is it cash flow? Is it operating efficiency, cost, risk management? But coming up with some solutions that can then address those particular drivers. We've decided at ANZ we'll try and stay abreast with some of the industry developments and be ready with some of these new tools to support our corporates. But as I said earlier, it does require a lot of the parties involved in the transaction to be all in agreement that this is something they're going to do. And as I said earlier too, it's one reason why things have been slow to develop. But the more that banks are ready to participate, then I think we'll start to see some of these things develop.
Alan Hughes, an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you again to Alan, and we'll be discussing corporate treasury again later on. Well, that's it for now, but do join Stephen and I for Talking Sibos at 9:45.
Right. You want to come back? And also today is ASEAN Day, so actually besides the chats that we have here on the show, I'm kind of looking forward to what might be on the menu for lunch.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Are you not cooking?
Join us at 9:45. We'll see you then.
See you.